I'm Mason. I'm 34 years old, and my brother hacked my laptop and transferred $20,000 out of what he thought was my savings account. When I found out, Dad snapped, "He's in debt. Don't be greedy, family helps family." I didn't call the police. I just smiled, because that wasn't my personal savings. It was Dad's secret retirement fund he asked me to manage. Before I tell you about the moment his face turned ghost white, let me know where you guys are tuning in from in the comments. I read every single one of them. Now, to understand why I smiled instead of screaming, you have to understand the night it happened. It was a Tuesday in mid-April, tax season. If you know, you know. I work as a financial analyst, but I do private accounting on the side, so April is basically a month where sleep is a suggestion, not a requirement. I was sitting in my home office, surrounded by stacks of receipts and 3 empty coffee mugs. The only light came from the glow of my dual monitors. It was 2:15 a.m. My eyes were burning, dry and gritty, like I'd been staring into a sandstorm. I was just about to shut down for the night when my phone buzzed on the desk. It vibrated against the wood with that aggressive, rapid-fire hum that usually means an emergency. I glanced at it, expecting a client panic email or maybe a spam call. It was a notification from the bank. Wire transfer initiated. Minus $20,000.00. Recipient. Crypto_etc. I stared at the screen. My brain, sluggish from exhaustion, took a solid 10 seconds to process the numbers. $20,000. Gone. Just like that. I sat up straight, the fatigue vanishing instantly, replaced by a cold spike of adrenaline that shot right through my chest. I grabbed the mouse and logged into the banking portal. My fingers were trembling slightly, hitting the wrong keys, forcing me to retype my password. Come on, come on. The dashboard loaded. The balance on the account ending in 4490, the high-yield savings account, was 0. My first thought was identity theft. Some hacker in a basement halfway across the world had cracked my firewall. I immediately started the protocol. I'm good at this. It's my job to track money. I pulled up the access logs for my router and my personal server. I needed to see the IP address. I was ready to see a proxy server from Russia or China. But when the log popped up, I froze. The access didn't come from outside. It came from a device named Caleb's MacBook Pro. I stopped breathing. I literally stopped breathing. I stared at that name on the screen until the letters started to blur. Caleb, my younger brother. He had been staying at my parents' house for the last 3 months after his landlord kicked him out. My parents live about 20 minutes away. But here's the thing. I had given Caleb my Wi-Fi password 6 months ago when he came over for Thanksgiving. His laptop had auto-connected to my network. But he wasn't at my house. He was at Mom and Dad's. I dug deeper. I checked the remote desktop logs. Someone had used TeamViewer to access my desktop remotely. The connection originated from the IP address of my parents' house. The realization hit me like a physical punch to the gut. It wasn't a stranger. It was my brother. He had logged into my computer remotely, probably guessing my password because, stupidly, I used a variation of our childhood dog's name for my personal login and wired the money to a crypto exchange. He stole 20 grand. From me. The rage that followed wasn't hot. It was ice cold. It started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the coffee mug. I just picked up my phone and dialed his number. It rang, and rang, and rang. Hello. His voice was groggy, or maybe fake groggy. Caleb, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Calm, detached, mechanical. Did you enjoy the transfer? Silence. Dead silence on the other end. Then, a rustling sound, like he was sitting up in bed. What, Mason? What are you talking about? It's 2 a.m. The $20,000, Caleb. The wire transfer you just initiated from my computer via remote desktop. The one that went to a crypto exchange. I don't know what you're talking about, man. You're crazy. Maybe you got hacked. He was stammering. He's always been a terrible liar. The IP address is Mom and Dad's house, Caleb. The device is your MacBook. Don't lie to me. You stole $20,000. Look, Mason, chill out, okay? His tone shifted instantly from denial to defensiveness. That's Caleb's signature move. I didn't steal it. I borrowed it. I'm going to double it. I have a sure thing. This new coin, it's going to the moon, man. I was going to put it back before you even woke up. You transferred it to a crypto exchange? Are you insane? I stood up, pacing my small office. Transfer it back. Now. I can't, he whispered. What do you mean you can't? I already leveraged it. It's locked in a smart contract for 24 hours. But listen, Mason, trust me. By tomorrow night, it's going to be 40 grand. I'll give you 25 back. Seriously. I hung up. I couldn't listen to another word of his delusional gambling addict logic. I was about to dial 911. My finger was hovering over the keypad. This was grand larceny. This was a felony. This was prison time. Then my phone rang. It wasn't the police. It was Dad. Caleb, the coward, had immediately run down the hall to wake up Daddy. Mason. Dad's voice was rough, sleep-heavy, but firm. Don't call the police. He stole $20,000, Dad. He hacked my computer. I know. He told me. He made a mistake. He's panicked. But you are not going to ruin your brother's life over money. Ruin his life? He ruined his own life. That is my money, Dad. We will discuss this in the morning. Come over here. Now, we need to handle this as a family. I'm calling the cops, I said, my hand shaking. If you call the police, Dad said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous, you will never step foot in this house again. Do you hear me? He is your brother. Family helps family. Get in your car and come here. We will fix this. I stood there in the dark office, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I looked at the empty bank account on the screen. I looked at the phone. I felt a strange shift inside me, a gear turning, a lock clicking into place. Okay, I said softly. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I grabbed my keys. I didn't call the cops, because as I walked to my car, I remembered something. I remembered exactly which account Caleb had drained. In his haste, in his greed, he hadn't checked the account owner's name. He just saw savings and a big number. He thought he stole my money. Dad thought he stole my money. And that gave me an idea. I drove to my parents' house in a daze. The streets were empty, the streetlights flickering past like strobe lights. My grip on the steering wheel was so tight my knuckles were white. To understand why I didn't just turn the car around and drive to the precinct, you have to understand the dynamic in our family. And more importantly, you need to understand the history of that specific bank account. I've always been the responsible one, the boring one, the one who went to college, got a degree in finance, got a CPA, got a steady job with a salary and a 401k. Caleb was the wild spirit. That's what Mom called him. He was the dreamer. He dropped out of college to start a dropshipping business. Failed. Then he tried to be a day trader. Failed. Then an influencer. Failed. Every time he crashed and burned, Dad was there with the fire extinguisher and a checkbook. But 2 years ago, the dynamic shifted. My parents' marriage has been rocky for a decade. They aren't divorced, but they live parallel lives. Mom spends her time at church and with her garden club. Dad spends his time at the golf course and investing. Dad had inherited a plot of land from his great-aunt in Texas. Mom didn't know about it. It was a weird, forgotten piece of scrubland that nobody thought was worth anything. Until an oil company decided they needed to run a pipeline through it. Dad sold it quietly. He netted about $150,000 after taxes. He didn't tell Mom. He definitely didn't tell Caleb. He called me. I remember the day clearly. He took me out to lunch at a steakhouse, something he rarely did. He ordered a scotch, looked me in the eye, and slid a check across the table. I need a favor, Mason, he said. I looked at the check. Dad, what is this? That's my retirement. My real retirement. Not the pittance your mother and I have in the joint account. He leaned in, lowering his voice. If your mother finds out about this, she'll want to renovate the kitchen, or take a cruise, or give it to the church. If Caleb finds out, he shuddered, he'll beg for every cent until it's gone. So what do you want me to do? I want you to open an account. In your name. You manage it. Keep it safe. Grow it if you can, but mostly just keep it hidden. I'll give you 5% of whatever interest it earns as a management fee. But on paper, it's your money. If anyone asks, it's your savings. I was hesitant. Dad, hiding assets isn't exactly. It's not hiding assets, Mason, he interrupted, cutting into his steak. It's asset protection. I'm protecting our future. When I get too old to work, this money is what's going to keep me out of a state-run nursing home. I trust you. You're the smart one. You're the smart one. That was the hook. I wanted his approval. I always wanted his approval. So I did it. I opened a high-yield savings account under my name, but I nicknamed it Project T in my personal ledger. I deposited the money. Over the last 2 years, Dad had dipped into it a few times, always for emergencies, always secretly. But mostly it just sat there, accruing interest. By the time Caleb hacked my computer, that account had roughly $20,000 in liquid cash in it. The rest I had locked up in long-term bonds that couldn't be touched easily. Caleb, being lazy, had grabbed the liquid cash. But here is where the financial ruin twisting knife comes in. Dad assumes, he fully believes that I have my own savings. And I do. I have a substantial amount saved up because I live below my means. But my personal money is in a completely different bank, specifically to avoid mixing funds with Dad's secret stash. Caleb didn't hack my bank. He hacked the bank where I kept Dad's money. But tonight, driving to their house, I realized neither of them knew that. I thought about all the times Dad bailed Caleb out. When Caleb got a DUI 3 years ago, Dad paid the lawyer $5,000 and told me, "Don't tell your mother." When Caleb racked up $12,000 in credit card debt buying inventory for his failed sneaker business, Dad paid it off. He's learning, Mason. Give him a break. When Caleb stole my identity to open a utility account for his apartment because his credit score was 400, Dad made me promise not to press charges. He's your brother. He needed lights. I was always the cushion. I was always the one expected to absorb the impact of Caleb's disasters. But not this time. As I pulled into their driveway, seeing the lights on in the living room at 3 a.m., I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. It was the calm of a man who just realized he held a royal flush while his opponents were bluffing with a pair of twos. I turned off the ignition. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired, yes, but I practiced a smile. A sad, defeated, compliant smile. If Dad wanted to play the family helps family card, I was going to let him play it. I was going to let him play it all the way to the bitter end. I walked up the steps and opened the front door. The house smelled like stale coffee and anxiety. I walked into the living room. It was a scene I'd witnessed a dozen times before, just with different stakes. Mom was asleep upstairs. Dad had managed to keep this quiet from her, naturally. The men's club of dysfunction was in session. Caleb was sitting on the couch, head in his hands, looking like a tragic figure in a bad soap opera. He was wearing his pajamas. He looked up when I entered, his eyes red-rimmed. Fake tears? Real panic? With Caleb, it was always a 50-50 split. Dad was standing by the fireplace, arms crossed, wearing his bathrobe. He looked furious. But as I stepped closer, I realized the fury wasn't directed at the thief. It was directed at the situation. "You're here," Dad said. "Not hello. Not I'm sorry. I'm here," I said, keeping my voice low. "Where is the money, Caleb?" Caleb sniffled. "I told you, Maze. It's in the exchange. I can't move it for 24 hours. But the graph is going up. I swear, by tomorrow noon, I can pay you back and keep the profit." "You stole $20,000. I repeated, ignoring his crypto bro nonsense. "That is theft. That is prison." "Stop saying that," Dad snapped. He walked over and stood between me and Caleb, physically blocking me from my brother. "Nobody is going to prison. Keep your voice down, your mother is sleeping." "Dad," He hacked my computer, I said, putting just the right amount of incredulity in my voice. He used a RAT remote access tool. That takes planning. He didn't just stumble onto it. He's been spying on me. I wasn't spying, Caleb shouted. I installed it a while ago just in case I needed to borrow a file or something. I was desperate, Mason. I owe people money. Bad people. If I didn't come up with 20 grand by Friday, they were going to break my legs. There it was. The shadowy loan shark excuse. A classic from the Caleb Greatest Hits compilation. So you rob your family? I asked. I was borrowing it. Enough. Dad slammed his hand on the coffee table. Mason, sit down. I didn't sit. I stood my ground. I want my money back, Dad, or I'm filing a police report. I have the logs. I have the proof. Dad took a deep breath. He massaged his temples. Then he looked at me with that look. The look of a disappointed patriarch dealing with a rebellious subject. Mason, he began, his voice taking on that lecturing tone. Look at your brother. Look at him. He's a mess. He's scared. He made a terrible judgment call. A felony, I corrected. A mistake, Dad barked. He's in debt. He's drowning. You are doing fine. You just got that promotion last month. Didn't you? You have your investments. You have your condo. You have no kids, no debt. I blinked. I knew where this was going, but hearing it out loud was still breathtaking. So because I'm responsible, I deserve to be robbed? It's not robbery, Dad said, waving his hand dismissively. It's family. Family helps family. When you were kids, if Caleb fell down, you picked him up. That's your job. You're the older brother. I'm not his ATM, Dad. Don't be greedy, Mason, Dad hissed. The word hung in the air. Greedy. I'm greedy. I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. He took $20,000 from me. And you have more, Dad argued. You have plenty. Listen to me. If you call the police, Caleb goes to jail. His life is over. Is that what you want? Do you want to be the reason your brother has a criminal record? Do you want to break your mother's heart? Emotional blackmail. Weaponized guilt. He was hitting all the buttons. So what do you propose, Dad? I asked. I just eat a $20,000 loss? Dad looked at Caleb, then back at me. He squared his shoulders. Yes, you let it go. I stared at him. Let it go. Consider it a contribution, Dad said, struggling to find the words. A contribution to saving your brother. He will pay you back eventually. We all knew that was a lie. But for now, you write it off. You don't report it. You don't tell your mother. You clear the debt. I looked at Caleb. He was watching me through his fingers, holding his breath. He looked like a child waiting to see if he was getting a timeout or ice cream. I looked at Dad. He was defiant, arrogant in his demand. He truly believed he had the right to redistribute my wealth because he was the father. But he forgot one tiny, crucial detail. He forgot that the savings account Caleb drained was the account he had asked me to set up. In that moment, I had a choice. I could scream, "That's your money, you old fool." I could reveal the secret. I could watch them panic. But if I did that, Dad would force Caleb to pay it back. Or Dad would sell something to replace it. Or worse, Dad would blame me for letting it get stolen. He would twist it so it was my fault for having weak security. No, that wasn't enough punishment. I needed to lock this in. I needed to make sure there was no way out for them when the truth dropped. Okay, I said. My voice was soft. Dad blinked, surprised by how quickly I folded. Okay, I repeated. You want me to let it go. You want me to treat this $20,000 as a gift to Caleb to get him out of trouble. You're telling me, as my father, that I should not expect this money back and I should not involve the authorities. Yes, Dad said, exhaling a huge sigh of relief. Exactly. That is the Christian thing to do. That is what a good brother does. And you promise, I said, looking Dad dead in the eye, that we never speak of this money again? That the debt is settled? I promise, Dad said. It's buried. Gone. Thanks, Maze, Caleb squeaked. Seriously, thank you. You won't regret this. I looked at my brother. I know I won't. I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Dad asked, suspicious. Just turning off the fraud alert. I lied. I opened my voice memo app and stopped the recording I had started the moment I walked into the house. I'm going home, I said. I'm tired. Good man. Dad patted my shoulder. A heavy, patronizing pat. I knew you'd do the right thing. I walked out of the house into the cool night air. I got in my car, drove around the corner and pulled over. I replayed the recording. Dad's voice was crystal clear. Don't be greedy. Consider it a contribution. You write it off. I smiled. A real smile this time. They wanted me to let it go. So I did. I let go of Dad's retirement fund. The next morning, the sun came up, but I didn't feel the usual hangover of sleep deprivation. I felt energized. I had work to do. I took the day off from my firm. I called in sick mental health day, which wasn't technically a lie. I had a very important meeting to arrange. I called Elena. Elena has been my friend since college. She's a contract lawyer, sharp as a tack and twice as dangerous. She's also the only person outside of my family who knew about Dad's secret fund because she helped me draft the original management agreement that Dad refused to sign because he didn't want a paper trail. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far away from where Dad or Caleb might spot us. Let me get this straight, Elena said, staring at me over her latte. Caleb stole 20 grand. Your dad thinks it's your money and told you to eat the loss. But it's actually your dad's money. And you agreed. I agreed to let it go, I corrected. I have it on tape. I played the recording for her. She listened, her eyebrows climbing higher and higher. When it finished, she let out a low whistle. Mason, this is diabolical, she said, a grin spreading across her face. I love it, but you need to cover your ass. Legally, you are the custodian of that account. If your dad turns around and sues you for mismanagement or negligence, you need proof that he authorized this use of funds. That's why I'm here, I said. How do I lock him in without revealing the secret? Elena tapped her pen on the table. Email, the casual confirmation. Create a paper trail that looks like you're just being a dutiful son confirming the family resolution. We spent the next hour drafting the perfect email. It had to be vague enough not to trigger Dad's paranoia about the secret fund, but specific enough to identify the transaction. Subject: resolving last night's issue. Hi, Dad. Just wanted to confirm our conversation from last night, so I can put this behind me mentally. Per your request, I am canceling any police report regarding the unauthorized transfer of $20,000 from the savings account under my management on April 15th. I understand that you want this treated as family assistance for Caleb, and that I am to let it go and not seek repayment. I'm doing this out of respect for you and the family. I hope this helps Caleb get back on his feet. Love, Mason. I hit send. Now, the waiting game. Dad is terrible with technology, but he checks his email on his phone. 2 hours later, my phone pinged. A reply from Dad. Thanks, son. Proud of you. Let's move forward. Don't bring it up to your mother. Boom. Signed, sealed, delivered. I showed the email to Elena. She high-fived me. You're legally bulletproof. He explicitly authorized the forgiveness of the debt regarding that transfer. He thinks he's forgiving a debt to you, but the wording savings account under my management covers the secret fund. But I wasn't done. I went to the bank that afternoon, the bank where my actual money was. I have a significant amount saved, ironically almost exactly the same amount Dad had in his secret fund, plus some investments. I moved everything. I closed my accounts at the bank Dad used. I opened new accounts at a completely different financial institution. I set up two-factor authentication with a hardware key. I changed every password I owned. I ran a military-grade virus scan on my laptop and, just to be safe, I wiped the hard drive and reinstalled the operating system. I scrubbed Caleb's digital fingerprints from my life. That night, I received a text from Caleb. Hey bro, crypto crashed lol. Lost it all. Sorry. But thanks for being cool about it. Dad says you are a hero. I stared at the text. Lost it all. Of course he did. There was no sure thing. He probably dumped it into some pump and dump scam or just gambled it away on online poker. He wasn't sorry. The LOL proved that. He thought he had gotten away with it. He thought the Bank of Mason was open for business and the penalty for robbery was a stern lecture and a hug. I didn't reply. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my balcony, and looked at the city lights. I felt a strange sense of mourning. I was mourning the brother I wished I had. I was mourning the father I wished I had. But mostly I was waiting. I knew Dad's pattern. He ignored the secret fund for months at a time, letting it grow. But eventually he'd want to check on his nest egg. Or he'd find another investment. Took 3 months. Summer rolled in. The humidity in the city rose, and so did the silence between me and my family. I stopped going to Sunday dinners. I told Mom I was busy with work. Dad didn't push it. He probably thought I was still sulking about the money. He liked that. He liked thinking I was making a sacrifice for him. Fed his ego. Then came the phone call. July 12th. I was at my desk at work when Dad called. It was 10:30 a.m. Mason. He sounded excited. Breathless. I need you to come by tonight and bring the laptop. What's up, Dad? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. I found it, he said. A foreclosure. A commercial property just outside of town. The guy is desperate. He needs cash fast. If I can put down a deposit by Friday, I can flip it for double in a year. It's the deal of a lifetime. Okay, I said. How much do you need? Everything, he said. Pull it all. The whole fund. Bring me a cashier's check or... Actually, just bring the access. We'll wire it directly from your computer tonight. I want to show the seller proof of funds tomorrow morning. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. Sure, Dad, I said. I'll be there at 7. I hung up. I sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of the office air conditioning. I felt sick. Not scared, sick. Like I was about to watch a car crash that I had cut the brake lines for. I printed out the bank statement for the account ending in 4490. I put it in a crisp manila envelope. I put the envelope in my briefcase. I drove to my parents' house. The atmosphere was festive. Mom was out at her book club. Dad always timed these things when she was gone. Caleb was there, eating a pizza on the couch, looking relaxed. He'd clearly forgotten all about the incident in April. Why shouldn't he? He faced 0 consequences. Mason! Dad greeted me with a wide grin. He poured me a scotch. Celebration tonight, boys. This property is going to set us up. I'm thinking of finally retiring next year. He was spending the money in his head. He was already remodeling the kitchen, buying the boat. That sounds great, Dad, I said, taking the drink. I didn't sip it. All right, let's get to business. Dad rubbed his hands together. Open up the magic box. Let's see the total. With interest, we should be sitting pretty. I set my briefcase on the dining table. Caleb wandered over, chewing on a slice of pepperoni. Can I get a cut for finding the emotional support? He joked. I didn't smile. I opened the briefcase. I didn't take out my laptop. I took out the manila envelope. I didn't bring the computer, I said. But I brought the latest statement. Dad looked confused. Why? We need to transfer it. Read it first, I said, sliding the envelope across the mahogany table. Dad picked it up. He opened the flap. He pulled out the single sheet of paper. He adjusted his reading glasses. He stared at the paper. The silence that followed was heavy. It was thick. You could drown in it. Mason, Dad said, his voice trembling slightly. Is this a joke? No joke, I said. It says the balance is $42.18. Dad looked up, his eyes wide, confused. Where is the money? There should be over $20,000 in here. Where is the rest? Caleb stopped chewing. He looked at the paper, then at me. Where is my money, Mason? Dad's voice rose. Did you move it to a different fund? No, I said calmly. It was withdrawn. On April 15th. Dad frowned. His brow furrowed as his brain tried to connect the dots. April 15th? That's... He froze. He looked at Caleb. Caleb's face went the color of curdled milk. He dropped the pizza crust. Wait, Dad whispered. He turned back to me. April 15th. That was the night. That was the night Caleb hacked my computer, I said. The night he transferred $20,000 to a crypto exchange. But... Dad shook his head, looking like a man trying to solve a physics equation while falling off a cliff. But that was your money, you said. We agreed. That was your savings. No, Dad, I said, leaning forward. You assumed it was my savings. I never said that. Caleb hacked the account ending in 4490. That is the account you asked me to open. That was Project T. That was your retirement fund. Dad made a sound I'd never heard before, a strangulated, high-pitched wheeze. He gripped the edge of the table. You! He pointed a shaking finger at me. You let him... You told me. You told me to let it go, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a razor. You told me, don't be greedy. You told me, family helps family. You told me to write it off as a contribution to saving my brother. I thought it was your money, Dad roared. He swept the scotch glass off the table. It shattered against the wall. You tricked me. I didn't trick you. I stood up. I did exactly what you asked. You insisted I forgive the debt. You sent me an email confirming it. Remember? Proud of you, son. Let's move forward. Dad turned to Caleb. Caleb was backing away towards the living room. Dad, I didn't know. I swear. I thought it was Mason's. I thought he was rich. You stole my money? Dad walked towards him. He wasn't the protecting patriarch anymore. He was a predator. You threw MY retirement into a crypto scam? It was an accident. Caleb shrieked. And you? Dad spun back to me. You let this happen. You could have stopped it. You could have called the police. I tried. I shouted back, finally letting the anger out. I tried to call the police. I was dialing 911 when you called me. You threatened to kick me out of the family if I reported him. You protected the thief because you thought I was the only victim. Give it back, Dad hissed, extending his hand. Give me the money. I know you have money, Mason. Fix this. Write me a check. Now. No, I said. What? No. That money is gone, Dad. Caleb lost it. And I am not your insurance policy. I am not your bank. You wanted to bail him out? Congratulations. You just did. With your own cash. I will sue you, Dad screamed. Spittle flew from his mouth. I will sue you for every penny. Go ahead. I pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen and played the recording. Don't be greedy, Mason. Consider it a contribution. You write it off. Family helps family. Dad's voice filled the room, mocking him. He stared at the phone. He looked at Caleb. He looked at the shattered glass. He realized he was trapped in a cage he had built himself. The violence wasn't cinematic. It was pathetic. Dad didn't punch Caleb. He lunged at him and grabbed him by the collar of his t-shirt. They wrestled clumsily into the living room, knocking over a lamp. You useless parasite. Dad was screaming. That was everything. That was my pipeline money. Get off me. Caleb pushed Dad. Dad stumbled back and fell onto the couch, breathing hard, clutching his chest. Stop it, I yelled, though I didn't move to intervene. Both of you stop. Dad glared at Caleb with pure hatred. It was the first time I'd ever seen him look at the golden child without the rose-colored glasses. The money was gone. The spell was broken. Get out, Dad wheezed. Dad, wait. Caleb pleaded. Get out, Dad roared. Get out of my house. You thief. You stole from your own father. I didn't mean to. Caleb was crying now, ugly sobbing. He looked at me. Mason, tell him. Help me. I looked at Caleb. I looked at the brother who had bullied me, used me and stolen from me, always hiding behind Dad's legs. I can't help you, Caleb, I said. I'm just the greedy one, remember? Caleb ran out the front door. We heard his car start and peel out of the driveway. Silence returned to the room. Dad sat on the couch, head in his hands. He looked old. Suddenly incredibly old. Mason, he whispered. He didn't look up. Fix this, please. I know you have savings. You have to help me. If your mother finds out. Mom isn't going to find out from me, I said. But I'm not giving you a dime. Dad looked up. His eyes were wet. How can you be so cruel? I'm your father. And he's my brother. I pointed to the empty door. You taught me that family helps family. Well, you just helped him. You gave him $20,000. You should be proud. That was a very generous gift. It wasn't a gift. It was when it was my money, I said coldly. It only became a theft when it turned out to be yours. I picked up my briefcase. Where are you going? Dad asked, panic rising in his voice. I'm going home. I have work tomorrow. You can't leave me like this. What am I going to do? I don't know, Dad. Maybe you should have thought about that before you told a victim to shut up and take it. I walked to the door. Mason, Dad yelled. If you walk out that door, don't come back. I stopped. I turned around one last time. Dad, I said, you used that threat 3 months ago. It worked then. It doesn't work now. Because I've realized something. I don't need you. You need me. And you just lost me. I walked out. I closed the door gently behind me. I got in my car. My hands weren't shaking this time. I felt light. I felt like I had just dropped a heavy backpack I'd been carrying for 30 years. My phone started blowing up immediately. Texts from Dad. Calls from Caleb. Mason, please. You ungrateful brat. We can work this out. I didn't block them. Not yet. I wanted to see them panic. I wanted to watch the consequences unfold. I drove home, the city skyline glittering ahead of me. I thought about the $20,000. It was a lot of money, but as I merged onto the highway, I realized it was the best money I had ever spent. It was the price of my freedom. The silence of my new apartment was different from the silence in my old home office. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of anxiety or the waiting game. It was the silence of peace. It has been exactly 14 months since I walked out of my parents' house, leaving a shattered scotch glass and a shattered family on the floor. 14 months of no contact. 14 months of blocking unknown numbers. 14 months of finally breathing oxygen that wasn't tainted by guilt. I was standing on my balcony, holding a cup of espresso, made with a machine that cost more than my first car, looking out over the skyline. It was a Saturday morning. The air was crisp. My phone buzzed on the patio table. I didn't flinch. I didn't feel that old spike of cortisol. I picked it up. It was a notification from my investment portfolio. My personal assets, the ones I had aggressively protected and moved to a new institution, were up 12% this quarter. I had just closed a deal at work that secured my promotion to senior analyst. My salary had nearly doubled. I had a girlfriend, Sarah, who knew the whole story and, unlike my family, actually respected my boundaries. Life was good. It was boring, stable, and incredibly good. But the universe has a way of balancing the scales. You can't have this much peace without someone else paying the price for the chaos. The buzzer to my building rang. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the video intercom. It was a woman. She was wearing a large sun hat and sunglasses, looking like she was trying to be incognito but failing miserably. It was Aunt Karen, Dad's sister, the family's official historian and unofficial stirring spoon. I debated not buzzing her in. I really did. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. And part of me, the part that had smiled when I drove away that night, wanted to know. I wanted the epilogue. Come up, I said into the intercom. 5 minutes later, Aunt Karen was sitting on my white leather sofa, looking around my apartment with a mixture of awe and judgment. She clutched her purse like it contained state secrets. You've done well for yourself, Mason, she said, her voice tight. Very well. Considering. Considering what, Aunt Karen? I asked, setting a coaster down for her water. I didn't offer her coffee. Coffee is for guests I want to stay. Considering you abandoned your family in their darkest hour, she snapped. There it was. The guilt trip. It arrived right on schedule like a commuter train. I sat in the armchair opposite her, crossing my legs. I didn't abandon anyone. I removed myself from a crime scene. There's a difference. How are they? Karen sighed, a long, dramatic exhale that rattled her jewelry. It's bad, Mason. It's catastrophic. She leaned in, her eyes wide with the thrill of gossip disguised as concern. Your father lost the house. I blinked. I expected bad news, but not that fast. The house? The one they've lived in for 30 years. Foreclosure. She whispered the word like it was a curse. After you left, after the incident with the money, your father spiraled. He was obsessed with that commercial property deal. He was convinced it was the only way to make back the money Caleb lost. He tried to leverage the house to get a hard money loan because he didn't have the cash deposit. I nodded slowly. That sounded exactly like Dad, doubling down on a bad hand. He got the loan, Karen continued. High interest, predatory stuff. He put everything into the deal. But the commercial property had a lien on it he didn't know about. The deal stalled. The investors pulled out. The hard money lenders came collecting. And he didn't have the liquidity, I finished for her. He had nothing, Karen said, because the secret fund was gone. She looked at me pointedly. She knew about the fund now. Obviously, in the screaming match that followed my departure, Dad had spilled everything. So, they're homeless? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Your mother moved into a small apartment near the church. She's not doing well. She's humiliated. She had to resign from the garden club board. You know how much that meant to her. And Dad. He's living in a motel on Route 9. He's driving for a rideshare app. He says he's consulting, but we all know. I looked out the window. A year ago, Dad was bragging about retiring and buying a boat. He was sitting on a secret pile of cash that could have kept him comfortable for a decade if he had just been humble. If he had just accepted that the money was there for safety, not for gambling. And Caleb? I asked. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. Karen's face hardened. Caleb is unavailable. Jail? Not yet, she said. He left the state. There were some people looking for him. Not the bank. Bad people. He took your father's car, the one the bank hadn't repossessed yet, and just drove south. Last I heard, he was in Florida, waiting tables and dodging subpoenas. She paused, taking a sip of water. Then she looked at me with those piercing eyes. Mason, your father is 70 years old. He's driving strangers around at night to pay for a motel room. Your mother is living off Social Security. And here you are. She gestured around my apartment. You have so much. You could help them. You could fix this. One check from you could get your mother into a nice condo. It could get your father off the road. This was the moment. This was the test. The flying monkey had delivered her payload. The guilt was laid out on the table, throbbing and raw. Family helps family. I looked at Karen. I thought about Mom, humiliated but safe. I thought about Dad, his ego finally crushed under the weight of his own decisions. Aunt Karen, I said softly, do you know why I didn't call the police that night? Because your father asked you not to, she said. No, I didn't call the police because I wanted them to learn. Dad spent his whole life bailing Caleb out. He used his retirement money he hid from his wife, to enable a thief. If I write a check now, what happens? Does Dad learn? Does Caleb learn? They've suffered enough. Karen cried. Where is your compassion? My compassion was giving them a choice, I said. Dad chose Caleb over me. He chose to protect a felony over my dignity. He told me to let it go. So I let it go. I let them go. I stood up. I'm not writing a check, Karen. Not today. Not ever. Because if I solve this problem for them, Dad will find another deal of a lifetime next week. And Caleb will find another account to hack. I'm breaking the cycle. Karen stood up, her face red. You're cold, Mason. You're ice cold. Your father was right. You care more about money than blood. No, I said, walking her to the door. I care about peace. And I paid $20,000 for it. I think that's a fair price. She huffed and stormed out. I watched the elevator doors close on her judgmental face. I went back to the balcony. I should have felt guilty. That's what we're programmed to feel, right? When our parents are suffering, we're supposed to bleed for them. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt vindicated. However, there was one loose end. One tiny, nagging detail that only I knew. I went to my desk and unlocked the bottom drawer. I pulled out a file. Inside was a cashier's check I had drawn up 6 months ago. See, when Dad set up the secret fund, he promised me 5% of the interest as a management fee. But I had managed the money aggressively. I had moved it into high-yield bonds and index funds before Caleb drained the liquid cash. The principal, the original land money, was what Caleb stole and lost. But the interest, the profit I had made over those 2 years before the theft, I had swept that into a separate subaccount every quarter, just as good accounting practice. Caleb hadn't touched that because he didn't know it existed. It wasn't a fortune. It was about $8,500. Technically, it was Dad's money. Or my fee. It was a gray area. But I didn't want a gray area. I didn't want a single penny of that cursed money contributing to my new life. I didn't want my success to be built on even $1 of Dad's secrets. I picked up the check. It wasn't made out to Dad. It wasn't made out to Mom. I had made it out to the Gambling Addiction Recovery Foundation. I looked at it one last time. It was the final severance. I put it in an envelope, sealed it, and walked down to the mailbox in the lobby. I dropped it in the slot. Clack. The sound was final. I went back upstairs, made myself another espresso, and sat down to work. My phone buzzed again. A text from Sarah. Dinner at 7? I'm making lasagna. I typed back. Perfect. I'm bringing the wine. Dad had his retirement plan. It was Caleb. And that investment had gone to zero. I had my retirement plan. It was me. And business was booming. They say you can't choose your family. That's the biggest lie ever told. You can't choose who you are related to by blood, sure. You can't choose whose DNA is spiraled into yours. But family? The people you let into your inner circle? The people you sacrifice for? You absolutely choose them. And sometimes you have to choose to unchoose them. It has been 3 years now. The dust has settled. But the landscape is forever changed. I eventually heard through the grapevine that Mom divorced Dad. It turns out, when you lose the house and your wife finds out it was because of a secret fund you hid from her, the marriage doesn't survive. She's happier now, I think. She lives in a senior community. I send her flowers on her birthday. We talk occasionally, but it's surface level. She still blames me, just a little bit, for not saving them. She can't help it. It's the programming. But she respects my distance. Dad is still driving. He sends me emails sometimes. Usually, they are links to conspiracy theories or get-rich-quick schemes. Mason, look at this gold IRA. We could make a killing. He hasn't changed. He never will. He's still looking for the shortcut. He's still looking for the magic button that undoes the consequences of his actions. I never reply. I drag them straight to the spam folder. And Caleb? He got arrested in Georgia for check fraud. A minor charge, but enough to put him in the system. He called me from jail, collect. I stared at the phone for a full minute. Inmate from Caleb would like to accept charges. I pressed decline. That was the hardest moment. Harder than the night of the theft. Because that was the moment I accepted that I couldn't save him. Dad had spent 30 years trying to save him, and all it did was create a monster who thought the world owed him a living. If I answered that call, if I sent him bail money, I wouldn't be helping him. I would just be the new dad. I would be the new enabler. So I let it ring. I want to talk to you about the concept of greed. That night in the living room, Dad called me greedy. He said, "Don't be greedy, family helps family." He used that word like a weapon. He tried to make me feel shame for having money. He tried to make me feel like a villain for wanting to keep what I had earned. But let's look at what greed actually is. Greed isn't having savings. Greed isn't wanting justice when you're robbed. Greed is Caleb, feeling entitled to take $20,000 that wasn't his because he was too lazy to work for it. Greed is Dad, hiding money from his wife for years because he didn't want to share, and then demanding my money to fix his mistake. Greed is demanding that someone else set themselves on fire just to keep you warm for another hour. I realized that family helps family is often just a manipulation tactic used by the people who need the most help and offer the least. It's a one-way street. When they say family helps family, they mean you help me. They never mean I will respect you. I paid a high price for this lesson. I lost my father. I lost my brother. I lost the illusion of a happy childhood home. But I gained something much more valuable. I gained my sovereignty. I own my life now. Every dollar in my bank account is there because I worked for it and I protected it. Every relationship in my life is there because it's healthy and reciprocal. I don't have to look over my shoulder. I don't have to worry about late-night phone calls or missing money. People ask me if I regret smiling that night. If I regret tricking Dad into forgiving the debt before he knew it was his own money. I think about it sometimes. Was it petty? Maybe. Was it deceptive? Sure. But was it necessary? Absolutely. If I hadn't done that, if I had screamed and revealed the truth right then, Dad would have gaslit me. He would have guilt-tripped me into covering the loss. He would have drained me dry emotionally and financially to cover up his own lies. He would have dragged me down with the ship. By letting him think he was spending my money, I revealed his true character. I let him show me exactly who he was when he thought it cost him nothing. And when the bill finally came due, he had no one to blame but himself. So here is my advice to you. Watch how people treat you when they think you have no power. Watch how they treat your resources when they think they are entitled to them. And if you ever find yourself sitting in a room where you are being told to set your boundaries on fire to save someone else's ego, don't scream, don't fight, just smile, lock the door, and let them face the one thing they are most afraid of: reality. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. It wasn't an easy story to tell, but I believe it's an important one. We often talk about financial literacy in terms of stocks, bonds, and interest rates, but true financial literacy is also about relational literacy. It's about understanding that money is a boundary. The biggest lesson I learned is that enabling is not love. Protecting someone from the consequences of their actions isn't kindness. It's a form of sabotage. By shielding Caleb for years, my father robbed him of the opportunity to grow up, and he robbed himself of a secure future. If you are the responsible one in your family, please remember, you are not a bank. You are not a rehabilitation center. You are a person, and your security matters. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member over money? Or maybe you've been on the other side. What is the one boundary you wish you had set sooner? Drop a comment below with your experience, or if this story resonated with you and you agree that no is a complete sentence. Just comment the word good. It helps me know that these hard truths are worth sharing. Stay safe, stay smart, and protect your peace.